Professor Kobby Mensah is joining us on the phone line. He's a political marketing expert. He works with the University of Ghana. Prof, good morning. Welcome to Morning Star.
Thank you, Lantam. Good morning.
And we're grateful that you've joined us. I hope everything is fine.
Absolutely. We're doing very well. Thank you for that.
Great. And we're grateful that you've joined us on the line this morning. Yesterday, former President Mahama met the press. He outlined his vision for the country and he gave the press the opportunity to ask questions. In fact, it was about a 2-hour session. A lot of questions, a lot of answers were given to the questions that were asked of him. How would you describe this whole engagement in the grand scheme of things as far as, prosecuting his political agenda is concerned?
Well, I think that yesterday the former president actually demonstrated a clear difference between himself and his opposing camp in terms of his delivery. He demonstrated mastery. You could see the depth and then the kind of the insight that he gave to past policies and to the current ones, the ones that he wants to pursue. He demonstrated the difference, especially in the NHIS, saying that in those days, during Kufuor's era, it was a district-based mutual, program, which former President Atta Mills of blessed memory changed it to a universal, nationally accessible policy. He demonstrated the difference between them and then the MPP on free SHS, saying that there was a progressive free SHS, thinking that there must be a certain infrastructure base to accommodate, the influx of students. He demonstrated, the parties, core social, democratic policies, where he talked about the rural electrification, water projects, free uniforms, etc. So I think that there was a complete, difference that you could see in his demonstration between his camp and the other camp, the MPP camp. He also demonstrated, that yes, if people are saying that he was corrupt for 7 years that he's been out of government, they still haven't been able to show any shred of evidence. And he challenged them. And he said that they were propagandists. They only come up when there is elections. So for me, it was a complete display of, experience, of depth, of difference between him and the other side. And I think he spared us of the usual sensational, kind of political communication that actually comes from other quarters. I mean, he was on message, very focused, not perturbed of any other question that would come. He never stonewalled any, journalist or question dodged any one of them. He took them one by one and clearly, articulated his position. So I think it was a complete display of a certain things to come if he gets the note.
Right, and he accused the current president of not being very accountable to the media. Of course, said he was not going to be like that. Indicated that every year he used to meet the media, and even now in opposition, he's meeting the media. Politically speaking, this encounter, sort of allowing the media to probe, to ask you any question that they want to, and you answering the questions and all of that, does it in any way, cast a certain, I don't know how to describe it, but, slur, so to speak, on this current administration with the way that they have engaged with the media? Because we know that President Akufo-Addo has done meet the press before, but he's done it about just once or twice.
Well, it absolutely does, of course. I mean, it's not for him to say. We have been talking about it, isn't it? In the media, obviously in the corridors of, chatters, we had actually talked about how unaccountable this government had been. When he chose a media house, he chose a friendly one, and not even regularly. He hardly meets the media to tell the nation what is that he's doing and what is that is not being done. and why. He'd never done that. I mean, even when he did the meet the press, he deferred, some questions to his ministers. Of course, you would say that rightly so, because they perhaps superintend the various ministries. But you see, the difference is that it shows that Mahama was very much on top of the issues, regardless of which sector. He was very much aware of what had been done, what is left to do, and the difference of doing it between the two camps. So clearly, it is not him actually accusing the current president for not being accountable. It is us. All of us have said, and I think the former president was reflecting on the public conversation, which he did rightly so. So for me, this administration, in times of critical need, had failed to show leadership. It never engaged us. And yesterday I said that, wow, what a leadership, because obviously we have lacked critical voices in this critical times. There is economic downturn, yet you do not have anybody in this current administration who is seeking to address the key issues that we have. And they've been stonewalling us. Not even the candidate who is actually seeking to become president from the MPP's quarters is prepared to even talk to us about something that he's supposed to be an expert in terms of the economy. And so I don't think that is the former president saying it. He's reflecting on the general, the sentiment, general sentiment of the Ghanaian people, and rightly so.
Should the current vice president and flag bearer of the MPP be taking a cue from what the former president has done?
I think I throw him a challenge. He owes us a certain extensive conversation. He has been dodging us for so long. I think that having done this, the former president has set the ball rolling, had actually kind of demarcated the competition, and I think that the onus is on him, especially that fact that he is the current regime. The onus is on him to face the press so that the citizens can hear his side of the story. It couldn't be one side of the coin. It has to be multiple, sides. And so the marker has been laid. I think that it is his responsibility, if he wants us to really, evaluate him as he would want to, then he needs to respond. I think that it will be good on him to do that.
Now, let's begin to touch on a number of the issues that the former president raised when he met the press yesterday. The 24-hour economy is the flagship policy of the NDC going into this election, and it seems to be their main campaign theme. He took the opportunity yesterday to elaborate further on what he means by the 24-hour economy. The criticism of that particular policy has been that it's quite ambiguous. A lot of people don't really understand how it's going to operate and all of that. From where you sit, the former president seized the opportunity properly to really break down the 24-hour economy to the understanding of all.
Well, I sometimes, ask myself whether people aren't critical enough, especially, when it comes to policy pronouncements and when it comes to the difference between your own appreciation of issues and you being fed by propagandist message. For those who actually say that they don't understand it enough, I question I do not question those who, frankly, you could believe that they do not appreciate, because obviously the differences in understanding and differences in cognitive capacity. But for those who you would expect to demonstrate certain ground and certain understanding, and they still claim of ambiguity, I sometimes ask myself whether they think that people can easily buy into that propaganda. I mean, for those who are very much exposed to the rest of the world, and even those who haven't been but have some kind of grounded in terms of policy positions. I mean, what is it that is ambiguous about someone saying that I want to open up an economy that actually sleeps at 8 o'clock but would not sleep at 8 o'clock any longer, but could work to the next morning, regardless of which sector. I mean, what's the difficulty? I came into this country and I was like, wow, people sleep too early because I've left for a long time. And of course, when I was leaving as a young man, when I was so young, so perhaps things of work environment, etc., wasn't that clear to me. Having come to the country and having worked in England for so long, I could even feel that people are sleeping too early. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, people are sleeping. Almost everything is shut down. And somebody comes and says, I want to, jumpstart or reform or restructure an economy that sleeps at 8 o'clock and give the opportunity for people to work longer hours, perhaps into the morning with different shifts, regardless of which sector. I mean, he mentioned sectors, but I think that we don't have to constrain it. If you feel that you have a restaurant, that could be, a pot, or that people can actually, consume or come into, anytime after 8 o'clock. What is the problem with that? I really find it interesting when people talk about ambiguity. But of course, there are different cognitive, layers. So maybe some people, their cognitive capacity doesn't actually get to that level. Then, of course, you need to see clarity in terms of asking people to break it down in a manner. But when you repeatedly say, oh, where is the explanation? Where is the explanation? I find it so, surprising. And so I don't think that there's any ambiguity at all. And I think that the former president sees opportunity to highlight, what he meant by it, saying that this is a policy that is going to push the country into an export-driven, economy, which would definitely underpin what he calls the physical sustainability of this country. Where is the difficulty? Where is the ambiguity? I think that we don't take time to ask ourselves whether what somebody is saying is propagandist or not. We consume what people say immediately. We have to be critical. A lot of the people who are actually saying, where is the explanation, are actually coming from a propaganda position, not really meant to say that there is no explanation, but just to cast some kind of doubt on someone's policy purpose. That's very disingenuous. And when you buy into that, because I know how propaganda works, I know because I teach it. And so somebody wants to deliberately keep saying, oh, where is the explanation? The explanation is not clear. Hoping that people will buy into the idea that the explanation is that clear. But have they themselves sat down and critically evaluated what somebody's saying and have come to that understanding that there's an ambiguity? No. A lot of people haven't even taken their time to listen to the conversation. And they're actually buying into the idea that there is no clarity, there is no ambiguity. I'm surprised.
I mean, that may well be, but I mean, looking at the platform that the president was on yesterday, having the ears of the media, I mean, who is who in the media? Everybody was there. Has he properly seized the opportunity to really break it down and put all those who are doing the propaganda, so to speak, to shame?
For those who do propaganda, you cannot convince them. Lantam, if you understand how propaganda works and political competition works, anybody who seeks to do a propaganda, you cannot convince them because they intend to do propaganda. For those who genuinely do not understand it, I am sure that they got appreciation of what it was yesterday. All right. And I am sure that they would have the responsibility to educate the people. I think that the former president sees the opportunity. In marketing, we talk about value exchange. All right. If I spend my time, precious time, listening to you for 3 good hours or more than that or something, I expect that you also appreciate my time to give me the value of what I don't understand and, for me to come to that understanding. I fully appreciate 24 hours, not only from yesterday. I've been following the conversation. I understand it fully by my own experiences and by my own listening to what they're saying. And I'm sure most people do as well. But for those who genuinely don't understand it and perhaps had taken their time to listen to the former president, I am sure they had come to a conclusion that they understand what it means. For those who want to do propaganda, don't bother yourself with it because that's their intent. They want to do propaganda. Would they change their position? No. Yesterday, people were still flying at, what did he say? What at all did he say differently? And certainly, these people are stonewalled in their propaganda. how would you be able to change them? You can't change them. So for me, you don't actually focus on those who are doing propaganda, hoping that you can get them understand. They can't understand because they do not want to understand it.
Well, yesterday the flag bearer also reiterated his commitment to drastically reduce the size of government if he becomes president. He said not more than 60 ministers and deputy ministers. And he calls it a lean and highly effective and efficient government. And he also went on further to say that it's going to curb expenditure, among other things. I mean, this will not be the first time that the former president has said this. And, we've had some of his political opponents also talk about the fact that they are going to, run a government which is also lean. I think Vice President Baumia has said something similar within the region of 50 or so. We have Lantam Papaanko also saying within about 50 to 60 ministers is what he is going to work with. Coming to that point, he describes it as something which is going to be lean and highly effective and highly efficient. Would you say that is the right communication to go down, to send a signal to the people that he means business?
Now, there were quite a lot of things that he said that is actually a reflection of the general public's position and sentiment. We have been complaining about inefficient administrations over the period. We have actually talked about the idea that our governments are too big for the country the size of Ghana. All right. Now, in the past, we had former President Kufuor, who actually firstly, admitted that government was too big and he was going to govern with, a certain number, I think 80 ministers or so. When he came into government, he said that he didn't expect the enormity of work, and so he went back on his word. Now, granted that at the time, we were not in this kind of ICT age that quite a lot of things could be executed or prosecuted with technology. And so you could actually, grant them that. But in this modern age, you have a lot of examples, all right? Even in recent times, you just heard Ruto of Kenya talk about a slash, 50% of his administration. It is doable. And so the Ghanaian people had become quite agitated, about the size of the government. We are prepared to see a change in behavior, political behavior. And that actually starts from the number of people that you go into government, because it has a clear relationship with our expenditure, all right? And so for me, I think that there is a sense that if they don't act on these, people will become so disgruntled to the level where we can show it physically, as been demonstrated in Kenya. So for me, for once, I think that I believe it, that they would do, because they know that if they don't do it, we're going to rise up. People are going to rise up clearly, because our pockets are actually getting drier and drier, yet the politicians are getting fatter and fatter. We cannot go on that path. And so for me, all those who are actually talking about cutting down on government expenditures through appointment, I believe them. I believe them for one thing. Times have changed. They know Ghanaians are now angrier than we used to be. There are examples, and especially in Kenya, it's been demonstrated that governments have listened and governments are taking action. They cannot go down that path that we used to. And so for me, all those who have actually promised cuts in government in terms of the number of people, it is doable because we now have technology, and it is doable because others are doing it. I think that they mean it, and I am sure that they will do it.
Right. Now let's talk about corruption. It's one of the biggest things that a lot of Ghanaians are worried about, and he touched on it yesterday. Do you feel the former president was able to, so to speak, discharge himself honorably, if I can use that, when it comes to demonstrating and convincing people that he will be serious about the fight against corruption? Because he said things like he's not going to shield anyone in his government or in the next government. He's going to allow the necessary agencies, to deal with anybody who is alleged to have committed, a corrupt act or whatever, whether the person is in his government or not. When you put that against what this current president has been saying when he is described as a clearing agent. He's also said that, well, I mean, I'm not going to set aside due procedure or due process. I'm going to allow them to go through it. And if they go through due process and there is no wrongdoing found, then so be it. So was the former president able to really convince people, in your estimation, that he means business when it comes to dealing with corruption?
I think that you demonstrate your commitment, with track record. All right. He did point out how he handed over his own friend and colleague to the responsible agencies to do their work, and we know the outcome of that. That he was jailed, and of course, at the time when he was president, we all felt that he didn't do well in terms of enough to actually stem on corruption. And I think that the former president has already said that he's learned his lessons. And so he's actually coming out with a different approach. He talks about, Operation Sting, for example, and he's actually highlighted that if you're in his government, you cannot, buy properties, etc. Of course, we can use the current president as an example of expectations and delivery. We all had high expectations for Nonado because of his personality in the position, and for so long, how he's been fighting, some of these things. Clearly, he disappointed us. And I'm sure it's not lost on Mahama. Obviously, he had the opportunity. He didn't do quite enough on that. But he's possibly going to have another opportunity. So now, does he have the will to really change the perception that people have on him? Maybe that's the case. So I think that, yes, we can take him by his word. He cited examples, and this government hadn't actually cited an example for us. All the cases, he had cleared them. He hadn't really demonstrated any commitment, just beyond administratively setting up a procedure. He referred himself to the Ghana police. He didn't even see through, or they didn't see through the procedures anyway. When he said that, the Yantechi said he actually has the president in his pocket. We never got any wind of, conclusive reports, for example. So for me, yes, would you do it? I can't tell. But then he has given us examples of what he did in the past, which is a track record, and he has given us a new way forward, which is a different dimension. So perhaps we can take him by his word, but we also have to be responsible to take him by that, because if they come and we don't challenge them and we don't push them to their word, clearly they would also find a way of doing it. We have given this current administration a whole, a platform to actually not to deal with corruption. We don't question them. We don't do anything that will push them to do that. And so they've gone scot-free. Can we, by this time, develop certain frameworks, certain approaches that we can take Mahama by his word and make sure that he sees through them? Perhaps we should be a much more responsible as media, much more responsible as civil society, as academics, so that the politicians walk the talk and they just don't tell us anything that they think they can fob us off with.
How should we be taking the former president's comments that...
I have to go because I have a class, so please.
Yes, very final one. How should we be taking the former president's comments that he's been exorcised, because he was asked a question about, this father for all kind of posturing that former President Mills had, that he also had, not going after people who had been corrupt in the previous administration and all of that. He said he's been exorcised. That spirit is not there anymore, and he's not going to shield anybody. How should we be taking that comment?
It is clearly a reflection of a change in attitude of the Ghanaian voter. By 2008, you could say that we were still nascent in our practice of the Fourth Republic, right? People were still in the forgiving mood, and so you would not actually fault the former president of blessed memory, Mills, to haven't, not actually gone down that route and had actually given out the father for all. Because at some point, the country needs a certain unifying, figures. The country needs a certain posture of, ensuring that we do not go down that flames anymore. All right, so perhaps that was appropriate. And again, it was expectations of Ghanaians at the time. People have actually changed. Our posture, our attitude have changed. In the corridors of conversations, you hear people saying, we cannot be taken for granted anymore. So I think that it was the right tone. It actually reflects on the public expectation, public's attitude. That's the message that people are actually wanting to hear. If you go into the corridors of Charters, everybody is talking about how this government is clearing, people, contrary to the expectation that we had for him. By the time Nana was actually coming into administration, everybody thought that he was quite different. He was going to be ruthless. He was going to be assertive. He hadn't actually done any of those expectations. And I think that, quite frankly, Ghanaians' attitude towards corruption and graft and all those things have changed into the realm of toughness. And so, for me, I think that the former president was reflecting on our views in the corridors of conversation. Everybody is looking forward to prosecution. Why should somebody stealing 5 cities should be prosecuted and someone with millions and millions of dollars of state money is going scot-free and receiving love letters? We can't go down that route anymore. And so if he says that he has been exercised, from that particular, spirit, so are the citizens. The citizens have been exercised. We are all looking forward towards a tough, accountable leadership. And I think that he sent the right signal.
Well, Prof, we'll leave it here. I'm grateful that you've spoken to us here on the Morning Star.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we'll definitely look forward to speaking to you again on some other issues. But we're grateful for your time this morning. Professor Kobby Mensah is a political marketing strategist or expert. He works with the University of Ghana. It's 3 minutes gone past 9 a.m. You're still listening to The Morning Star. You're on Star 103.5 FM. I don't know what your thoughts are on the interview I just had with Professor Kobby Mensah, but you can definitely let us know what those thoughts are. Just get to our Facebook page or our X page, look for Star 103.5 FM and connect with us. Let's know what your thoughts are. Let's know what your opinions are on these issues. And of course, we'll stay on this. We'll very shortly try and get onto the phone line and speak to Dr. Frederick Odro. He's a governance expert. We'll ask him a few questions about this as well here on the Morning Star. Well, let's continue our conversations here on the Morning Star. Dr. Frederick Odro is joining us on the phone line now for another conversation. Of course, still on the same theme that we've been discussing this morning here on the Morning Star. Dr. Frederick Odro, good morning. Hello, Doc.
Hello.
Yes, Doc, good
Hello,
morning.
Lantam.
Yes, Doc, good morning. It's been a while. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
It's great to have you here on the Morning Star.
Lantam, your line is not too good this morning.
Is it better now? Is it better now? Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, it's a little better, yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We're grateful that you've joined us on the phone line this morning. I want to first of all ask you what your reaction as a governance person, what is your reaction to the meets the press, so to speak, that was done by former President Mahama yesterday? How would you describe it?
Well, on the whole, I think it's a very good engagement. It's very important political leaders can reach with the people through, even if it's through the media, to engage with people, to articulate their views, to indicate what they intend doing. More especially, it's good and very helpful if they can also receive some feedback in the form of questions or suggestions as to expectations of Ghanaians. So I believe it's a very good exercise that has been done.
And do you believe that the former president, I was asking this of Professor Kobby Mensah earlier, do you think he discharged himself creditably, with outlining his vision, with answering the questions that were thrown at him?
No, come on. The line was better when you started.
Well,
do I think what?
Yes. Do you think the former president discharged himself creditably, with the way he answered the questions that were thrown to him by the media, and of course the speech he gave before the questions came in?
Lantam, I'm afraid the line is terrible. I can hardly hear the latter part of
Right.
your,
I will try and work
question.
on that because I can hear you clearly here. I'm wondering why the line is.
Can you let them call me again?
Okay. Yes. We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do that, Prof. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Unfortunately, Dr. Frederick Odro seemingly cannot hear me clearly, but we'll of course call him back and get him to answer some of the questions that we've been asking him. But of course, if you're listening to The Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM, we've been having conversations about former President Mahama's engagement with the media yesterday. He, first of all, outlined his vision for the country. Of course, we've heard him talk about some of the things that he mentioned yesterday. And after that, he gave the media the opportunity to ask him a lot of questions. And he talked about corruption. He talked about Galamsey. He talked about the 24-hour economy. He even talked about the economy itself, because I think he was asked a question about how he was going to stabilize the city. And, he gave some explanations as to how he was going to do that. And he anchored that on the 24-hour economy, policy, that is going to sort of change the structure of the economy so that we can get to a point where we don't always have to be worried about the city depreciating and all of that. So quite a lot was said yesterday. Earlier, engaging Professor Kobby Mensah, he indicated that it's something that perhaps the opposition leader, not the opposition leader, the former President Mahama is the opposition leader now, but we're talking about the current or the incumbent vice president should probably try and emulate that one as well. But let's get back to the phone line. Hopefully we have a better connection to Dr. Frederick Odro. Dr. Odro, welcome back. Can you hear me clearly now?
Thank you.
Can you hear me clearly now?
It's a little improvement, but so let's try.
Okay. The question I asked is, do you think that the former president did well in the way he answered questions yesterday?
Well, I think he did quite well generally. I would say he did very well. And it's also, you see, a public engagement of this nature has got some advantages for the person doing the engagement, because you are able to bring out your own views and you try to answer the questions to the best of your ability, So by and large, I think he did quite well. Although I believe questions remain to be asked, because if you listen to the policies he intends rolling out, should he become a president, I think they did not come out with clearly articulated timelines and what exactly is going to happen. It's more or less like an announcement of what is going to happen. How it is going to happen is not clarified in the presentation, nor did they come out in the answers as I would have expected. For instance, if we talk about the fact that you will take back land, political people in political office have taken, when are you going to start that? From what point in our history are you going to begin to take back those lands? And what did he do when he was the president? You see, the key thing when it comes to President Mahama is that he's held the office of a president before. So if he says he's going to do anything, we need to be asking a lot more questions of him, because he's had opportunity to be in that office. Those problems he's articulating today are not new problems. They were there when he was the president. What did he do? And did he succeed in what he did?
And if he fails, why did he fail in that? And whatever he's going to do now, how is he going to do it? So we need to ask him some of these important questions so that we can actually trust that indeed there were things he's learned out of the tenure he held. And if he is going to come back, these are the ways he's going to go about correcting the mistakes he made whilst in office.
Right. So, Professor Kobby Mensah I spoke to earlier said perhaps the opposition should be, not the opposition, the incumbent and current flag bearer of the MPP should be emulating this. Would you agree?
Today you're having too much challenge with your line.
Oh, the line is still pretty bad. Right.
I sincerely again cannot hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Right.
It's unfortunate that we do apologize for the bad nature of the line. I don't know exactly why we're having a bad connection to Dr. Frederick Odro there. He's a governance expert. We'll work the line and try and re-engage him. But pretty surely also we'll be activating the phone line so that you can give us a call and let us know what your thoughts are on all that we've been discussing. And especially if you watched the former president's encounter yesterday, what were the highs for you? What were the lows for you? What was your takeaway from that encounter? If you had the opportunity to ask him a question, what would that question have been? All of that, your thoughts, you can share them with us here on the Morning Star. I mentioned that very soon, very, very soon, we'll activate the phone line so that you can give us a call and let us hear. So you can write the number down. When it gets there, we'll activate the phone line. The number is 055-288-0216. So you can give us a call on that number. Not now, but much later on. Right now, we're trying to work the line once again and engage Dr. Frederick Odro. If we are unsuccessful, then perhaps we can move on to some other issues. But of course, you're still listening to Star 103.5 FM. It's the Morning Star. We're transmitting to you live from our studios here at the Platinum Place in Accra. And we'd love you for company. Corner, and she's the Kokosa lady. All the Kokosa in the country. If you want to hear all the Kokosa in the country, you need to make sure that you go and see Etonam. She will tell you all the Kokosa that is happening in the country. What are people saying about what? Okay, yeah, Etonam. Where is she? Etonam, you are here. Are you ready with the Kokosa? Is the Kokosa coming?
Lantam, it's not Kokosa.
It's what?
It's what is trending. And
what's trending is Kokosa. What's trending is Kokosa. So we'll come to it. We'll come to it. Don't worry. We'll come to it. But let's once again try and engage Dr. Frederick Odro.
Hopefully you have a better line now. Doc, apologies. We've been really trying because we really want to, engage you on this. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you this time. But when it gets into the middle, then the line begins to drop.
Too bad. We apologize. So I was asking you whether or not you think that the current vice president should emulate what former President Mahama has done.
Who should emulate?
The current vice president and flag bearer of the MPP.
Oh, in terms of public engagement.
Exactly.
No, he has no choice. Because if you want us to vote for you as the president of the country, you owe us a duty to engage with us. Because if we don't know what you are going to do, how can we trust you and vote for you? So I think even for me, with President Mahama, I think, yes, this is a start, but it is not enough. Because for all of them, for all the candidates who are vying for positions, even at the parliamentary level. You need to go out there. You need to engage with the people. In fact, it's more helpful when it is not you talking down to us, but there is an opportunity to even ask you questions. I think President Mahama even started something on social media some time back, and that allowed people to even pose questions back to him. All the other candidates, especially Vice President Baumia, is also going to need to have a system to engage with the voters so that we will know exactly what he's going to do, especially within the context of the current economic situation. What new thing can he convince us he's going to do that will trust him by voting for him? And we also need to hear from President Mahama. As I said, we've experienced his presidency already. What went wrong then? Because some of the issues we are talking about today have persisted from those times until now. And we need to trust that if he is coming back and we can entrust him with our votes, we need him to show us that indeed this is what he's going to do, and especially what he's going to do different. So all of them, and especially Vice President Baumia, needs to have a lot more public engagement. And he needs to provide avenues where questions can be asked of what he says he's going to do, and possibly what under President Akufo-Addo they've also done as to why some things have gone terribly wrong and what they can do different. So they all have that responsibility. Otherwise, I, for one, would not be comfortable going to vote for anybody whom I don't know what that individual is going to do for me. If you really want my vote, and I believe that should be the question all Ghanaians should be asking of the politicians, if you want my vote, convince me that indeed you've got something you're going to do for me. And it's not going to be the business as usual, because it seems politicians have taken us for granted. They think we owe them blind loyalty, that this person is MPP, this person is NDC, and that no matter what we vote for them. No, it's not going to happen like that. We need to be convinced, because it is not going to be business as usual. They need to come out and tell us and convince us. That is the bit that I think we should drum home to the politicians, that they owe us that responsibility of convincing us that it is not going to be business as usual. Because if you ask me from where I sit, I don't think we've had the expected dividends we thought democracy was going to give to us. So if they want us to vote for them, then they must come out to convince us.
Well, Dr. Drew, we'll leave it here. I'm grateful that you've spoken to us here on the Morning Star.
And let me say congratulations. We'll talk. God be with you.
God be with you too. Thank you very much,
Dr. Frederick Drew there speaking to us. Very shortly, like I said, we'll